How do we get more power and efficiency out of our Spey cast? An important thing that is often overlooked with most Spey casting instruction is that we want to try to load the bottom part, the bottom end of our rod to get a more efficient cast and to get more power in the cast if it's needed. And what this does for us is it eases the fatigue on our body. It allows us to use both hands instead of relying mostly on the top hand, which is always hard to remember. It's something we all want to do and strive to do, but it's really easy to forget. So I wanted to talk about that today, how to load the bottom portion of your rod where it's stout and strong in it. And if it loads, it gives your rod more power. That's where we want to load the rod. So to do that, the main thing we're trying to do is initiate the forward stroke with our bottom hand. So to do that, here is what I endeavor to do when I'm trying to get more use of my butt section and the neck section up, say, of the rod, is number one, we want our casting angle like this after the sweep. We want our bottom hand out in front and our top elbow in front of our torso. So we're set up to use the bottom hand as opposed to getting this elbow behind us and then using mostly top hand. It does work, and a lot of guys do this, but I think it really helps us to get more power with our hands in the bottom end of the rod by using the bottom hand it moves first when we cast. So instead of being like this and then casting with our top hand, we're set up with our elbow out in front, our bottom hand out in front, and we've got the fulcrum point right here, so we can take advantage of both hands as opposed to the fulcrum point being down here when we use one hand. So we just have to rely on the top hand. It doesn't force the rod to bend down here. It keeps the load on the tip section of the rod where it's least powerful. And then we just don't, that's what makes for fatigue, and that's what makes for really a less efficient Spey cast. So we want efficiency in our Spey cast. We spend a lot of money on our rods and lines, and therefore we want that rod to do the work. So at this stage in my casting journey, that is what I endeavor to do. Now, I'm casting a long belly line. It's about 65 feet on a 14-foot rod. And when we're casting a long line, it forces us to use correct technique . And the temptation is to use power, to use brute force. But that will not work with a long Spey line. Works is the same things that work with Scandi casting, with Skagit casting or underhand casting, and that is we keep our elbow in front even during the sweep. So when we sweep, we don't lift and then get our arms going way back here and then cast like this with our upper arm. not that there aren't some guys who can do that and do it well, but what helps me is to keep my elbow in tight even with these long lines. So I'm largely relying on rotating my body and pushing with that bottom hand. And that is the big takeaway. The big takeaway is when I begin my sweep, I'm going to push out with my bottom hand and then rotate my body. And then what has helped me the most to remember when I'm in the forward cast position and I want to get the most power and efficiency out of my Spey cast and use my bottom hand is to push out just a little at the end of the sweep. Now that might be a big Spey casting no-no and maybe not something you want to get started if you're struggling, but it will if you push out, sweep, and then as you pass your target and you want to load that rod a little more, push out just a little more with the bottom hand. And what that does for me is it reminds me, if I push out here, reminds me that I'm going to pull here and use that bottom hand to initiate the cast and load up this lower portion of the rod to get the most power from the rod, make the rod do the work, and really use the less energy and effort from me. That's what this will do. Also, with the correct anchor placement, which is depending on the line, the longer the line, the more I want that anchor placed out in front of me between me and my target. That, if you do these things, and you initiate with the bottom hand, use it as all the way through the stroke if you want, or if you want to practice and get that bottom hand going, push out here and pull through the whole cast, and that will at least get it ingrained in your mind to use the bottom hand. That will help relieve fatigue, providing that your D-loop is correct, nice and big, your anchor is light, especially with these long lines. You need a real, or I prefer a very light anchor. So, if I'm going to cast out there, I'm going to point my toes towards the target, rotate my body towards the target. I'm going to twist my body towards the dangle, and then I'm going to push out with my bottom hand, rotate my body, push out more. And that, if I push out right here, I always remember to pull down here. But you want to just push out just a little bit at the end and not pull with your top hand. In the sweep, you use your body and the bottom hand if you're going to do anything. And that will keep this elbow out in front. It'll force you to put your bottom hand out here, and that helps you to use both hands in the cast depending on what length of line you're wanting to use. It will help you to use your bottom hand and load the bottom end of the rod. So this can be applicable to skagit casting, to scan to your underhand. Just to remember, use that bottom hand as much as you can get away with in the sweep. And that will help you, especially if I do it at the end. It really helps me to remember to use my bottom hand for the forward stroke. I don't want to get you in trouble because one thing that really helped me with my single spey was to hold my hand still during the sweep. That will help with consistency and accuracy of placing your anchor. But in order to use my bottom hand and keep my elbow in front, I've learned that it does help me to use more bottom hand in the sweep. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, say 10 strips on a long belly line. You don't want any slack. Not effortless, but very little effort in that cast. That's almost 1,000 grains, that line. So it's a handful, but if I remember to use that bottom hand, it really makes my job easier and funner, or more fun. So give her a try, see what you think, and I hope this really helps you with any spey casting or two-handed casting that you do. Thank you for watching.